Hi, so today I'm doing something new and I will be reading and acting out 100 Dresses by Eleanor Estes, and it's one of my favorite books, so here we go. First page. The 100 Dresses. Wanda, Chapter 1. Today, Monday, Wanda Petronsky was not in her seat. But nobody, even Peggy and Madeline, the girls who started all the fun, noticed her absence. Usually Wanda sat in the next to the last seat in the last row of room 13. She sat in the corner of the room where the rough boys who did not make good marks on the report card sat. The corner of the room where there was most scuffling of feet, most roars of laughter when anything funny was said, and most mud and dirt on the floor. Wanda did not sit there because she was rough and noisy. On the contrary, she was very quiet and rarely said anything at all, and nobody had ever heard her laugh out loud. Sometimes she twisted her mouth into a crooked sort of smile, and that was all. Nobody knew exactly why Wanda sat in the seat, unless it was because she came all the way from Bogan Heights, and her feet were usually caked with dry mud that she picked up coming down the country roads. Maybe the teacher liked to keep all of the children who were apt to come in with dirty shoes in one corner of the room. But no one really thought much about Wanda Petronsky once she was in the classroom. The time they thought about her was outside of school hours at noontime, when they were coming back to school, or in the morning early before school began, when groups of 2 or 3 or even more would be talking and laughing on their way to the schoolyard. Then sometimes they waited for Wanda to have fun with her. The next Tuesday, Wanda was not in school again, and nobody noticed her absence again except the teacher and probably Bill Bryan, who sat in the seat behind Wanda's and who could now put his long legs on the empty desk, one on each side, and sit like a frog, to the great entertainment of all in his corner of the room. But on Wednesday, Peggy and Maddie, who sat in the front row along with other children who got good marks and didn't track a whole lot of mud, and did notice that Wanda wasn't there. Peggy was the most popular girl in school. She was pretty, she had many pretty clothes, and her auburn hair was curly. Maddie was her closest friend. The reason Peggy and Maddie noticed Wanda's absence was because Wanda made them late to school. They waited and waited for Wanda to have some fun with her, and she just hadn't come. They kept thinking she'd come to school any minute. They saw Jack Beggles running to school, his necktie askew and his cap at a precarious tilt. They knew it must be late, for he always managed to slide in his chair exactly when the bell rang, as though he were making a touchdown. Still, they waited 1 minute more, and 1 minute more, hoping she'd come, but finally they had to race off without seeing her. The 2 girls reached the classroom after the doors had been closed. The children were reciting in unison the Gettysburg Address, for that was the way Miss Mason always began the session. Peggy and Maddie slipped into their seats just as the class was saying the last lines. That these dead shall not have died in vain. The nation shall, under God, for a new birth of freedom, that the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. The Dresses Game, Chapter 2. After Peggy and Maddie stopped feeling like intruders in a class that had already begun, they looked across the room and noticed that Wanda was not in her seat. Furthermore, her desk was dusty and looked as though she hadn't been there yesterday either. Come to think of it, they hadn't seen her yesterday. They waited for her a little while, but had forgotten about her when they reached school. They often waited for Wanda Petronsky to have fun with her. Wanda lived up on Bogan Heights, and Bogan Heights was no place to live. It was a good place to go and pick wildflowers in the summer, but you always held your breath till you got safely past Old Man Sevenson's yellow house. People in town said Old Man Sevenson was no good. He didn't work, and worse still, his house and yard were disgracefully dirty, and rusty tin cans strewn all about, and even an old straw hat. He lived alone with his dog and his cat. No wonder, said the people of the town, who would live with him, and many stories circulated about him, and the stories were the kind that made people scurry past his house even in the broad daylight and hope not to meet him. Beyond Svensson's there was a few small scattered frame houses, and in one of these Wanda Petronsky lived with her father and her brother Jake. Wanda Petronsky, most of the children in room 13 didn't have names like that. They had names easy to say, like Thomas, Smith, or Alan. There was one boy named Bounce, Willie Bounce, and people thought that was funny, but not funny in the same way as Petronsky was. Wanda didn't have any friends. She came to school alone and went home alone. She always wore a faded blue dress that didn't hang right. It was clean, but it looked as though it had never been ironed properly. She didn't have any friends, but a lot of girls talked to her. They waited for her under the maple trees on the corner of Oliver Street, or they surrounded her in the schoolyard as she stood watching some little girls play hopscotch in the worn, hard ground. Wanda, tell us, how many dresses did you say you had hanging up in your closet? 100. 100? Exclaimed all the girls incredulously as the little girls would stop playing hopscotch and listen. Yeah, 100. All lined up, said Wanda, then her thin lips drew together in silence. What are they like? All silk, I bet. All silk, all colors. Velvet too? Yeah, velvet too. 100 dresses, all lined up in my closet. Then they'd let her go. And then before she'd gone very far, they couldn't help bursting into shrieks and peals of laughter. 100 dresses! Obviously the only dress Wanda had was the blue one she wore every day. So what did she say she had 100 for? What a story! All the girls laughed derisively while Wanda moved over to the sunny place by the ivy-covered brick wall of the school building where she usually stood and waited for the bell to ring. But if the girls had met her at the corner of Oliver Street, they'd carry her along with them far away, stopping every few feet for more incredulous questions. And it wasn't always dresses they talked about. Sometimes it was hats, or coats, or even shoes. How many shoes did you say you had? 60. 60? 60 pairs or 60 shoes? 60 pairs, all lined up in my closet. Yesterday you said you had 50. Now I got 60. All alike? Oh no, every pair is different, all colors, all lined up. Wanda would shift her eyes quickly from Peggy to a distant spot, and as though she were looking far ahead, looking but not seeing anything, then the outer fringe of the crowd would break away gradually laughing, and little by little in pairs the group would disperse. Peggy, who had thought up this game, and Maddie, her inseparable friend, were always the last to leave, and finally Wanda would move up the street, her eyes dull and her mouth closed tight, hitching her left shoulder every now and then, in the funny way she had, finishing the walk to school alone. Peggy was not really cruel. She protected small children from bullies, and she cried for hours if she saw an animal mistreated. If anybody had said to her, "Don't you think that is a cruel way to treat Wanda?" would have been very surprised. Cruel? What did the girl want to go and say she had 100 dresses for? Anybody could tell that was a lie. Why did she want to lie? And she wasn't just an ordinary person, else why would she have a name like that? Anyway, they never made her cry. As for Maddie, this business of asking Wanda every day how many dresses and how many hats and how many this and that she had was bothering her. Maddie was for herself. She usually wore somebody's hand-me-down clothes. Thank goodness she didn't live up on Boggin's Heights or have a funny name, and her forehead didn't shine the way Wanda's round one did. What did she use on it? Sapolio? That's what all the girls wanted to know. Sometimes when Peggy was asking Wanda those questions in that mock polite voice, Maddie felt embarrassed, and she studied the marbles in the palm of her hand, rolling them around and saying nothing herself. Not that she felt sorry for Wanda exactly. She would never have paid attention to Wanda if Peggy hadn't invented the dresses game. But suppose Peggy and all the others started in on her next. She wasn't as poor as Wanda, perhaps, but she was poor. Of course, she would still have more sense than to say 100 dresses. Still, she would not like them to begin on her. Not at all. Oh dear. She did wish Peggy would stop teasing Wanda Petronsky. That'll be all for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you will come back to see the rest of the chapters, for this is one of my favorite books. And yeah. Okay. Bye.